The question is, how do we move forward?
Will anybody make real shit anymore?
You have to have these difficult conversations.
We need a complete restructure.
In a democratic process,
have political influence.
Once the viewers engage and look at what is being presented to them, they'll have a better understanding of that question.
Can you hear me now?
Good evening, Great Debate League. I'm your moderator and host for this evening, Ebony Johnson. We appreciate you for taking part in tonight's debate. I hope that you can stay with us until the very end as we rely on your votes to determine who is the greater debater. Tonight's debate topic is rape culture in America. Rape is a heinous act that many have suffered. How to adequately deal with this violence is of ongoing concern. Some argue that it is an act that is socially normalized and supported within our society. Tonight's premise: rape culture does not exist in the United States of America. Arguing the affirmative, Devonte Thomas, a composer, observer, and analyst who studied at South Carolina State University and George State University. Arguing the negative, Funmilayo Ekundayo, aspiring travel journalist, food blogger, and mother to a Black son. Our guiding definitions for tonight: rape, an act of sexual intercourse with an individual without his or her consent through force or the threat of force. Culture, the customs, arts, social institutions, and achievements of a particular nation, people, or other social group. This is an exhibition debate and will not be ranked. There will be no personal attacks of any kind, no profanity, and no interrupting. Both participants are allowed to call a fact-check timeout only during one of their designated speaking times. And now we will begin with round one, opening statements. Each participant will provide an uninterrupted opening statement for a total of 3 minutes apiece. We will begin with Devonte Thomas arguing the affirmative.
Okay, so can everybody hear me? Okay, so basically when it comes to the two words rape and culture in America, I'm basically going off what those two words actually mean. So if we take the actual meaning of the word, and my thing is words mean what they mean, they don't mean what you want them to mean, or they don't mean whatever you want them to mean when it's convenient for you. So rape culture, she just gave the definitions, and in my opinion, that does not exist in this society. Rape is a terrible thing. We do have a problem in this society with it, but that doesn't mean that we embrace it, that we make it a customary act, or that we encourage it, or anything along that line. So, yeah, just to wrap up, I'm not going to use the whole 3 minutes. It doesn't exist in this society. Rapists get punished. Rapists get locked up. Rapists get charged. They can't stay near schools. Sex offenders can't get jobs. So by definition, that can't be culture because that's not customary in the mass of the society. So.
Arguing the negative, Funmilayo Ekundayo.
Thank you, Ebony. Rape culture exists. It exists in every corner of our societies, from our classrooms to the Supreme Court, from movies and music to our religions, whose practices we faithfully embrace. Rape culture is to sexism what nicotine is to cigarettes. Sexism is not innate, it is introduced and cultivated through social influences, which manifests itself as rape culture. Rape culture is 1 in 6 women being sexually assaulted in their lifetimes. The term rape culture itself was coined in 1970s. It was designed to show the way in which society blames victims of sexual violence and normalizes the sexually violent behaviors. Rape culture allows both men and women to assume sexual violence is a fact of life, a rite of passage, if you will. Sexual violence refers to sexual harassment, sexual assault, and rape. This culture is displayed in how we police what girls wear instead of telling men to stop sexualizing children. It is women having to be hypervigilant. It is a Christian minister blaming the children victims for their rapes. It is placing the burden of avoiding sexual violence on the would-be victims of the crime, instead of finding ways to reduce the violent acts themselves. My opponent says rape culture does not exist in the United States of America. He asserts that our society has not accepted sexual violence as a norm, and that would be inaccurate, to say the least. The term the term rape culture was not magically pulled out of the air. It has been studied, documented, and verified by many academic scholars, sociological scientists, and statisticians. The term rape culture has allowed us to examine our behaviors and has allowed us to reduce sexual violence in female victims by 60% between 1995 and 2010. Saying rape culture does not exist is a further violence that trivializes the seriousness of a sexually violent culture. We have not come as far as my opponent would like us to think. We are still very much in a society where the culture of sexual violence is fostered and in some circles rewarded.
Thank you so much. And now for round 2, our lightning round. This allows each participant to have an open cross-examination to engage in interrogation of their opponent's position. It is a shared time frame for both debaters. Audience, please listen carefully and pose your questions for our debaters, as our audience Q&A is the next round. And now, Devonte and Funmilayo, we will begin the lightning round. You have a total of 15 minutes. Have at it.
Rape culture was a coined term. You said it was studied by sociologists, which is an opinionated field. And all of that which you just laid out is sexual violence, is sexual molestation, but the act of rape, the definition was given. And by my accounts, every rapist has been either jailed or killed. So to call it culture, that's a made up term. So my question to you is, what does all of that has to, like, how does that encompass rape culture? Because rape culture would be the culture of accepting the forceful sexual participation of somebody without their own consent.
I understand your question. Thank you very much for that. So I'm going to reread the definition of rape from the very beginning. It is an act of sexual intercourse with an individual without consent through force or threat of force. And again, the definition of culture is the custom, art, social institute, and achievements of a particular nation, people, or the social group or other social groups. All right. So to answer your question, no, not every rapist ends up going to jail or ends up being punished. There is actually, that's in no way is that true. What it actually is let's take a look at this really quickly, since I have this written down. Only only a third of all rapes are reported. And when it is reported, the police on a larger scale do not investigate this. When it is investigated, 4 in 10 cases are ever prosecuted. And when the case do go to trial, and during the trial, of course, the victims are further traumatized by the defense attorneys, who often blame them and try to shame them. For example, the judge, Derek Johnson, in 2008, he said, if someone doesn't want to have sexual intercourse, the body shuts it down. That is a judge who was deciding on a rape case. He essentially decided to become a gynecologist overnight, and decided that the body itself will just shut down if it doesn't want to get raped, which is false. Again, another example of the idea of rape culture being in our society, more so in the judicial system, is another judge in Kansas State in 2019, I believe. His name is County District Judge Michael Gibbons. He said in a sentence where a 67-year-old man who sexually assaulted a 13 and 14-year-old girl, he said, the judge himself said, he found that the victims in the case are more the aggressors than the participants in the criminal conduct. The judge blamed the 13 and 14-year-old for their own rape by a 67-year-old man. Another example of this being an issue is in 2020 here in New Jersey. A judge was removed from his seat for repeated and serious misconduct, including asking a woman who complained of rape whether she had tried to close her legs. So again, back to the assertion that most rapists do end up getting some kind of punishment or being criminalized. That is false, unfortunately. Now, my question for you is, with all these evidences of rape existing, not just rape, sexual assault being a very major issue, with the fact that we spend $95 billion in the United States every year to prevent rape of children. This is just for children. $95 billion a year is how much we spend in trying to prevent rape of children. With these programs existing themselves, there is, of course, a reason they exist, right? Why do you think they exist if rape culture was not a thing?
They exist because we are trying to eradicate the minority of people who take advantage of other people, which is not significant of a culture. The minority can't be a culture. You just listed about 5 or 6 examples of people doing bad things. That doesn't make it culture.
I listed 5 or 6 examples of judges
I understand
who are diminishing rape culture in the judicial system, after listing that barely 4 in 10 cases actually see a day and thing is happening with them. There is no mobility towards justice for them. And the church is one of the cornerstones of our society. Now, imagine if this is something that is happening in the church, which it is. We don't have to imagine, because it's actually happening in the church, which is one of the cornerstones of our society. That is one of the 4 pillars of our cultures, is religion. Right. And now let's talk about the judicial system, which is another cornerstone of our society. Again, I've provided you with 5 examples of judges who were recently disbarred or unseated because of their attitude towards the sexual violence of citizens in our country. These are just 4 examples. I'm sorry, 5 examples. Go
But
ahead.
they got disbarred or rejected, correct?
After several years on the bench.
It still happened though. And
Correct.
this is my point.
Correct. And
You
that is the
said
point. Mhm.
you said the Pope, like these popes are molesting kids, which I think is terrible. But is the entire church clapping and saying, "Oh yeah, we're good with this, we're cool"? Is the entire Catholic community saying, "Oh yeah, we support that"? Is the masses of this country saying we support that? No. So it's not a culture. It's one man doing something wrong. Just like all those judges, that was one
Understood.
man doing
I
something
see your
wrong.
perspective. I do.
And those are other people helping him out do something wrong. That's not
Okay.
a culture.
So now I do want to point out one thing though. The highest court in the land is the Supreme Court. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
On the Supreme Court, as of right now, 1/3 of the 6 men have faced sexual misconduct accusations on the Supreme Court. That's 2 out of 6. Okay.
Okay.
2 out of 6 of the men in the Supreme Court have had at some point some sexual misconduct accusation. Brett Kavanaugh, who was nominated by the president, who is also facing multiple sexual allegations. But for some reason, none of these people are actually in jail. Actually, they are making laws for this country based on their ethics. In so doing, they of course are rewarded for who they are. That's the culture. They are the definer of the culture. They are the leaders of this country.
Okay. I went out for a little bit. I'm sorry, my mic went out and my camera went out. But you were saying that there's 3 out of 6 on the Supreme Court?
No, there is 2 out of 6. So 1/3.
2 out of 6.
1/3.
Okay.
Moving further, Attorney General Barr, who is currently the federal Attorney General of our country.
Okay.
He was said to have praised, this is in a 2019 NBC News article by Heidi Pritzberg, I believe is her name. He was said to have praised a book that claimed that colleges unfairly went after male students accused of sexual assault. This praise from the federal general has spurred new policies in schools, allowing the disclosures of the identity of the accusers to alleged assailants. So they're essentially telling them who their accusers are, right?
Okay.
This was in response, of course, to the Title IX federal civil rights law that the Obama administration had created that essentially bans sexual discrimination in education. That law directed colleges and universities to pursue more aggressively sexual misconduct allegations. But in 2017, the Trump administration, which includes, of course, Trump, who currently has multiple sexual allegations against him, and the people he has appointed, in 2017, they ordered that Obama era protection be reversed. Now, again, the people in charge create the cultural norms of our society. And when actually 2 out of 6 of the men in the Supreme Court have had at some point some form of sexual allegations against them, but did not see a single day in court because they had the power and authority, of course, and influence, of course, to not have to go through that. Right now, there's still a lot of cases in court for Donald Trump that is still not seeing the light of day. So the way when you say that it's not accepted in society, it's not applauded in society. Donald Trump says, grab them by the pussy.
Right.
What did you say to that?
That was terrible.
What did the rest of the world say to that?
That was one man saying a terrible thing. And
yes, that is one man who is the president of the United States of America.
Absolutely. And by that logic you just laid out, that means every registered American citizen is racist.
Exactly. They embrace the culture of grab them by the pussy.
Every American citizen is racist, whether you're black, white, Mexican.
Rape culture. I'm sorry,
No.
racist? Are we talking
Yeah.
about race?
No. By that logic you just laid out, that the leaders of this country set the culture, that means every American citizen, black, white, Mexican, or other, is racist because Donald Trump is racist, correct?
No, I disagree. I disagree very
So
much. I
that's
did
what I'm
not
saying.
say every
It's the
citizen
same
of the
principle.
United States are rapists. That is not what I said. I said rape culture exists in the United States. That is what we are arguing.
I don't think so because, like I said, it's not a culture. All I've heard is a lot of information about people doing things that are wrong.
Absolutely.
The culture is dictated by the masses,
These are
not by the leaders.
examples.
All right, that's our time. We appreciate both of you for participating in that lightning round, and hopefully our audience has been able to come up with some questions of their own, because we are now going to round 3, audience question and answer. We invite our audience to submit questions for each debater. You can submit one question, we'll answer both debater each question, unless you have a particular one for a particular debater. But
Okay.
each participant will be given the chance to respond to each question uninterrupted. So audience, please submit your questions now. As we bring up our audience question, go ahead.
Is it in the chat? I can't look at the chat.
No, we'll bring them up. You're good.
Okay.
We will bring it out. You're all good, and I'll read the question. You're all good. As we bring up our audience questions, please support our growth by donating to our Cash App, The Great Debate League, and check us out on our YouTube channel, Great Debate League Inc., and become a member of our Patreon page. We are also on Instagram, and you can subscribe to our podcast on Spotify and our iHeartRadio. And now we will take our first question, which we will have Devonte answer. You will have 1 minute and 30 seconds total to respond. And
Okay.
now for our first audience question. So does the fact that rape is not sanctioned by the state make rape culture not exist?
Absolutely, because that is the definition of those two words, even combined. You combine the definition. Rape, we know what the definition of rape is, and culture. Culture is not a social institution. Culture is not a thing, like I said, culture is to be celebrated, embraced, and encouraged by the masses, not the leaders, the masses. Because just like with Donald Trump, he's not setting no culture for us. The masses reject Donald Trump. So in that, I would agree with that. Yes, it does not. It does not exist because it's not sanctioned by the state. The state does not reward you for raping somebody. The masses does not reward you for raping somebody. They're not okay with it. If you know about these claims and allegations, that's the reason why you know, because people don't agree with it. So by definition, it can't be culture.
And now we will have Funmilayo answer the same question, who is arguing the negative in this debate. So does the fact that rape is not sanctioned by the state make rape culture not exist?
No. Culture does not necessarily need to be sanctioned by law. Culture can be sanctioned by religious belief. Well, not necessarily sanctioned, but culture can be religious belief. It can be your ethnic cultures. It can be, culture is a lot of things. It is a lot of things, but it is not law. It is not necessarily just law, but it is a set of beliefs that a group of people have, hold, and foster. Now, when it says that, when you ask if it's not sanctioned, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Of course it exists. It exists. There is evidence to the fact that rape culture does exist. The fear that people have inside of them when they first get sexually assaulted, will I be believed? Will I be believed if I go to the police office, to the police? Will they even investigate it? The culture is the diminishing of these sexual violences, which is why we have to put a label on it. When it comes to things like, for example, marital sexual violence. In a marriage, the rape of a married woman was previously deemed as irrelevant because they were already married. But this is in recent years, we have noticed that when we have taken the opportunity to help women who are in marriages, and we have started to take it seriously because we understand what rape culture is and what we need to change it.
Thank you so much. And now for our second audience question. What are your thoughts on the fact that 60% of girls under 18 have experienced some level of sexual assault? We will allow for Devonte to answer this question, who is arguing the affirmative. You have 1 minute and 30 seconds.
It's terrible. It's disgusting. I think rapists should face a harsher penalty. But you know, society is not with me on that. I won't get into detail. But the fact that that exists does not signify a culture. The fact that that exists signifies a problem, an epidemic that needs to be fixed. And like I said, like what was just explained is victim blaming. Victim blaming is not a culture. That's a victim blaming. You know what I'm saying? That has nothing to do with a culture. We have to learn how to separate things. We can't just throw everything in one bucket. There's nuance here. So yeah, it's ridiculous. It needs to be rectified quick as possible. That's it. I hate it.
Thank you so much. And now for Funmilayo arguing the negative, the same question to you. What are your thoughts on the fact that 60% of girls under 18 have experienced some level of sexual assault? You again have 1 minute and 30 seconds.
60% is more than 50%, which is average. That's 60% of the United States population, which is, if you know numbers, 60% is the majority. So the majority of women or girls are having to go through this societal rite of passage of being sexually violated.
That's not true.
That is essentially what it is. And that is a reduction from previous years, unfortunately. It is horrible, a horrible thing that most of the girls in our country have been sexually violated in their lifetime. And that is 39% of men also. 39% of men have been sexually assaulted in their lifetime. But of course, the amount of people that actually report these abuses are very, very few and far in between. I believe it's 24% of rapes that are, I believe, reported. Yeah. There you go. That's unfortunate. And that is the culture. You are right. That is the culture. If that is what you're asking, if 60% indicates that that's a culture, that that's a cultural norm for 60% of girls to be raped, that is a cultural norm, then yes, it is part of the rape culture.
Thank you so much. And now for our final question for each of you, for the audience questions. Does rape culture exist in prison or the military? Devonte, again arguing the affirmative. You have 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Prison or the military? No, because unfortunately I've been behind chains, and that's not accepted. Like I said, it's not a culture. It's not embraced. People are not saying, "Oh, when you come in here, this is what happens to you, bro." Like in the military, no. Once again, my contention is that these are a lot of people doing a lot of things wrong. And back to the previous question, that was a little bit disingenuous because it said 60% of 18-year-old girls, and it say 60% of everybody. So that was a little bit intellectually inconsistent. But does it exist in the military? Absolutely. Does it exist in the prison system? Absolutely. Does that make it a culture? No. That is my contention. I still haven't heard anything that signifies a culture being promoted, embraced, or enabled. It's not a cultural thing. It's people doing things wrong, but it's not a culture.
And again, for you, the same question, Funmilayo, arguing the negative. Does rape culture exist in prison or the military?
You know that joke about not dropping the soap? That joke is rape culture. There is a lot of jokes that we make when it comes to sexual assaults, when it comes to rape. And those jokes themselves, the art of making things comical to make them less serious, is rape culture. Does it exist in prison? Absolutely. Rape culture. And yeah, if you think about prisons and prisoners, you will think at some point, someone might have had some anal sex, probably involuntarily. You also see it in the movies. In the movies, there's a lot of sexual violence in prisons. So does art reflect life, or does life reflect art? As far as the military is concerned, I have read a few articles about women and men in the military who have been sexually assaulted, and unfortunately, they have a different set of rules for how they go about investigating these. And most of the time, these kinds of investigations are just simply swept under the rug, and that is something that is easily you can easily find out about that one. There is currently a movement, actually, in the military blogs and social media subgroups about this current type of culture, rape culture in the military. Yes, it exists.
Thank you so much. Thank you to our audience for posing questions, and to both of our debaters for answering those questions. And now we've come to closing statements. Each participant will provide an uninterrupted closing statement. They each have 3 minutes for their final statement. We will hear the affirmative closing statement from Devonte Thomas.
Okay. First of all, this has been a great thing. I didn't know this was gonna be like this. I thought it was just a group on Facebook that you just post your opinions and people get in the comments. But my closing statement is we have to learn how to separate people doing things wrong, and instead of being emotionally reactive to everything, which is what we only seem how to do nowadays, we have to step back and take an objective look at what we're looking at. Like I said, everything I've heard thus far is people doing things wrong and other people helping people do things wrong. That is not significant of a culture that is not embraced, encouraged. Like she said, culture can be negative. I guess culture can be negative, but it's not embraced. You see what I'm saying? So culture, as far as what I've seen, what I've learned, and as far as the definition, is not what has been explained here tonight. So basically, what I'm saying, that the actual the definition of what rape is and the definition of what culture is, it does not coincide with anything that is in this society today that is accepted among the masses of this society. And like I said, words mean what they mean. So they don't mean what you want them to mean. They don't mean what you want them to mean when it's convenient for your narrative, or your talking points or your trigger statements that you've learned from various groups. They mean what they mean. And we have to be careful when we start to twist and make up our own definitions of things and give placeholders to certain things, because we actually diminish real victims of these crimes. So rape is serious. Rape is an epidemic. It needs to be dealt with. Like I said, I can't stand it. I think it should be a harsher punishment for rapists of any kind, and justice for Breonna Taylor.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Devonte. And now we will hear for the final closing statement arguing the negative, Funmilayo Ekundayo.
Thank you. Sexual violence is primarily a crime of power and control. It can impact all people, regardless of age, ethnicity, race, or economic status. It is not just people doing things wrong. Rape culture is many people, more than 50% of people in a society doing the things wrong. That is the culture. In 8 out of 10 rape cases, the victim knew the perpetrator. Nearly 1 in 4 women may experience sexual violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually assaulted by the age of 18. In a study of elder female sexual abuse victims, 81% of the abuse was perpetrated by the victim's primary caregiver and 78% by family members, of which 39% were boys. Only 16%, I apologize, I misquoted that number. Only 16% of rapes are ever reported to the police. 43% thought nothing would be done, 27% felt it was a private matter, and 12% were afraid of police response, and 12% felt it was not important enough. This was a survey that was done to ask people why they did not report their sexual abuse. Lastly, an estimated 92,700 men are forcibly raped each year in the United States. Rape culture does not place the burden of the culture on any one sex or person. It simply highlights a societal behavior that we must be aware of, how it impacts our existence, and how the harm we cause by accepting it as a norm is associated to an individual. What we need in order to overcome traditions that no longer serve our communities is to be able to look at the different difficult topics like sexual violence and make the change we want to see clear by defining this issue. With 90% of sexual assaults being committed by someone the victim knows, this issue is closer to you than you think. Fortunately, we have terms like rape culture to point us in the right direction for a more equitable society. If the term had not been coined, it would be difficult to realize and label the pattern of further victimization of sexual abuse victims. I am grateful to have had this time to express these thoughts, and I would like to speak from one sexual assault survivor to all who are watching. To the victims of sexual violence, regardless of if you choose to not report it, I want you to know that you are not alone. There are resources in your local communities to help you. Please reach out to the National Sexual Abuse Hotline at 1-800-656-4673. That's 1-800-656-HOPE. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our debaters, Devonte Thomas and Funmilayo Ekundayo, for participating in the Great Debate League. Thank you to our audience for watching and submitting questions. Please donate to our Cash App so that we can continue to grow this league, and vote in our Facebook group poll for the Greater Debater, which will be up right after the debate. Please join us after this broadcast for our post-debate analysis with all of the GDL commissioners. Have a great night, and remember to speak the truth.